Chef Michael Elegbede started his journey in the kitchen at a very young age. Having his mother and grandmother run local restaurants that also served as cooking schools for young women, he naturally found himself responsible for several tasks in the kitchen. Then, at the age of 13, he arrived in America, where he spent his spare time fulfilling a cook's role in his mother's new Nigerian restaurant. After high school, he attended the University of Illinois at Chicago to study biology and become a doctor, as was expected of him, but soon realized his passion lay in cooking. Understanding that education is the key to success, Michael made the decision to attend the Culinary Institute of America, Greystone in California, gaining a degree in culinary arts. Upon graduating, he further refined his skills working at restaurants across the country, including the critically acclaimed 11 Madison Park restaurant in New York. Michael, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
I now know that you're on a mission to travel around Nigeria and showcase the cooking and the culinary artistry of our cuisine.
Definitely.
So tell me a little bit about what that feeling was like when you went from being in medical, like on the path to medical school, to going to culinary school. Because it's a bit different. Like, I mean, you're telling mama, like, we're going to medical school, you get that biology degree, and then you're like, actually, it's going to be culinary school. Like, what was that conversation like?
It wasn't a very long one. I think they've always seen my love for food. And, you know, to some degree, a doctor's job and a chef's job and a cook's job are very similar. You know, at the end of the day, you want people to feel good. And I've always wanted to care for people. And for me,
I'm sure Mom did not think that was the same thing. A doctor and a cook, I'm sure that was not the conversation she had.
They sobered up to it. Yeah. No, it was a very difficult decision to make. You know, the first son of an immigrant family. You know, we weren't very wealthy, and you know, I was going to become a doctor. They were very proud of me, and I really needed them to understand that, you know, if you're not happy with the path you're on, you cannot make anyone else happy. So an unhappy doctor cannot really care for people.
You're right. You're right. That is the worst kind of doctor.
You know.
So now you've made this decision, and you're like, well, I mean, I have this lovely biology degree, but let me go and get some more culinary training. Why did you feel it was so important to go to culinary school after you made that decision?
Like, I believe with everything that you do, knowledge is very important. There's a very big difference between being a cook and being a chef. I believe a lot of people can cook incredibly. I've had some amazing food from just regular cooks. But with every profession, you know, there's a tier of education that you need to understand the intricacies of cooking. For instance, you know, you can know how to grill fish properly, but do you know what is going on when a fish is grilling? And the knowledge of knowing what is going on when a fish is grilling helps you manipulate those processes. And that's the difference, you know. So
you felt that even with the experience of growing up in a cooking house, you grew up in a cooking house, you felt that that wasn't enough for you to really take Nigerian food to the levels you wanted to take Nigerian food to?
Not at all, not even close.
So tell me, what advantage do you have now as a culinary artist when you approach Nigerian food? What do you do differently?
I think because of my education and experience, I'm able to look at it from a very, very different perspective. Our ingredients, the possibilities for them, the diverse way we can use it. So understanding how carbs operate, you know, understanding, for instance, gari, eba that we eat, understanding that it's a starch and understanding the way it would process if I made it into a crisp. I have made eba chips and eba crisps to do a dish where I add egusi and efo, but as an appetizer rather than as a whole meal. So really just rethinking understanding how to manipulate those processes and those ingredients to create different experiences, you know.
And I know as part of this journey you're on, we're showing our audiences at home some pictures of some of the things that you've been creating and the manipulations you're doing with our local cuisine. You're traveling around Nigeria to learn more about Nigerian food, and you've just finished your South-South tour. Tell me the cities and sort of some of the interesting discoveries that you had on this trip.
Yeah. First, I didn't realize how beautiful Nigeria was.
So how do you travel, first of all?
By road.
So you travel by road.
Yes.
Are you driving?
No, we have a driver. I have, you know, either an intern or an assistant with me as well.
Okay.
So 3 of us.
Okay. So the 3 of you are in a car.
On the road, yes.
And, you know.
A month-long trip.
Wow.
Going from, rather, more than even the food, where we go to different, so we went to Anambra, Onitsha, Akwa Ibom, Calabar. You know, we went to the regions where, you know, people usually don't go to. We went places where the food cultures were very preserved. And every time we go there, we would cook with a very good cook from the region. Like in Calabar, we cooked with the woman who has been cooking for the king for...
So how do you get these linkages and these contacts?
Many times it's luck, you know, that drive to want it, you know, and asking people, you know, calling friends that are from the region, and just making sure it happens. Yeah.
So tell me, what do you feel is like one of the unique ingredients, let's say in a place like Onitsha or Enugu, that someone living in Lagos or living up north would never even come in contact with? What are some, because I think people feel like there's not a lot of variety in Nigerian food. So tell me a little bit about some of the ingredients that you came in contact with.
Well, it's more of the processes of a lot of these ingredients. So they have this unripe pawpaw. So they shave it really thin, then they dry it, and when they want to cook it, they cook it like a stir-fry pasta.
Oh.
Yeah, and it re-emulsifies it, and it's like they make with peppers and, you know, different vegetables, and it's very light, very clean.
And what do you, like, how would they normally eat that?
Just by itself.
No, like just as a lunch or breakfast?
You know, our cuisine is not very
I guess any time of the day kind of thing.
Yeah, so they put it in soups. It has this, you know, it gives like this mushroom-like crunch into the... And also with mushrooms, we have so many different types of mushrooms indigenously. You know, especially those regions by the border of Cameroon and Cross River. The food there is so diverse. The way they, you know, it's one state, yet, you know, from Obudu to Calabar, the food is very, very different. The use of sesame seeds to make soups, the way they dry, the way they ferment. Yeah, I learned so much about Nigeria and, you know, the people and the culture and how much is being preserved in those regions.
So actually, you mentioned fermentation, and I'm quite fascinated by fermentation processes. When I went to Japan, they show, like, you go on these tours of just fermentation around food. So you see soy, you see how they ferment vegetable. And then I also spent some time in Seoul, where they do a lot of fermentation of cabbage, which they make into kimchi. In Nigeria, like, what has been your experience around fermentation and us preserving that art of fermentation?
Well, you look at fufu. Fufu is fermented, and you know the extract of it is for tapioca. You know, you look at iru.
Yes,
iru is fermented locust beans. Ogiri, you know, fermented. Ogi is fermented. You know, we have some kunu. You know, is fermented. If you go to the Middle Belt, they even use rice sprout, and rice guinea corn guinea corn sprouts. In the process of making this kunu. And, you know, there are a lot of probiotics in this fermentation processes. And in many ways, we're in trying to eat like in trying to be modern in the way we eat in Nigeria, we're losing all of those beautiful culture and nutrients that are indigenous to our food.
Well, I mean, for me, I think that if you look at the fermentation styles and how people actually preserve that and make a huge effort to preserve it. And it's actually part of like tourism in some places, especially around food and seeing how people prepare their food. So what can we expect from you? I mean, now you've done the South. What's next for you?
Well, I plan on doing the rest of Nigeria. So the Southwest, where I'm from, you know, I'm a Yoruba man.
Yes.
And the North.
Okay.
And, you know, I began this journey wanting to understand this cuisine to help in my creativity and to help in telling the story of Nigeria, you know, more in a full and more existential form. But then I got to a point where I realized all of this information that I was attaining from these travels, I needed to share it in a way that, you know, more people have access to this information, because that's one of the problems with our cuisine. We don't really have documentation of our food. So I've embarked on writing a book about my trip around Nigeria. Okay. As well.
So how are you documenting that? So I know you're writing the book. Are you taking pictures? Are you doing videos? Like sort of. So has this had to make you and your team like amateur photographers as well, or
yes?
Have you is that one of the qualities of looking for an intern? You must be a photographer. Like, how is that? I mean, how is that also changing the way you document and chronicle, and also look at even designing food so that it is much more photogenic?
Exactly. You know, when I do these travels, you know, the driver, my assistant, the interns, they all become photographers. Phone, cameras. You know, everything you know, because, you know, the different perspective, different perceptions of the experiences. When it comes to the way I look at food and design, you know, food is when you're eating food, you want it to be a very holistic experience. You know, from the moment you see the food, you know, the aesthetics of it, you know, you eat with all of your senses. And that's how I like to bring food to life.
So I have so many questions for you. One of the things that I know, especially now that you're going up north, there's been some conversations I've heard people saying about wine production in the north, and especially in places like Jos. What are some of the things you found with pairing food and wine, and the accessibility of our cuisine when it comes to sort of even pairing with wine and all stuff like that?
Yeah, I studied wine in Napa Valley as well. And
I didn't even know that.
Our food lends itself beautifully to wine. You know, from our seafood to our, you know, even our spices. You know, you look at how a Sauvignon Blanc from New Zealand will pair very, very well with, you know, things like efo, with goat meat. You know, the acidity, the acidic notes in those would go very, very well. Very beautiful balances. Most of the dinners that I do are paired with wine, because I think it's very important, you know, that we show that our food is able to be on that world terrain, pairing with international, and if we're able to make local wines, you know, it would be amazing.
So that takes me to my next question. Now you've said that, what we need to do is showcase how our food sits side by side on global menus, internationally, if there's a continental menu, where there are other things. What do you think are some of the barriers for that? Why isn't Nigerian cuisine breaking in globally?
I think in many ways, it's unfortunate to say, but it's our fault.
Yes.
We don't see our food as food that should be on that global level. We don't give allowance to creatives to use our food in ways that every other culture allows, you know.
Give us examples.
You know, I've seen there's a lot of unawareness when it comes to culinary art. You know, an appreciation of a cuisine is wanting to get inspiration from that cuisine and use, you know, attributes of that cuisine in your art, in your creation. But we love our food so much, traditional food, and when we see it being used in a different way, sometimes we take offense to it. You know, we remember the Jamie Oliver thing with jollof rice. You know, when we see things like that, I think we should see it more as people, you know, beginning to at least walking into the door of what it means to experience Nigeria.
We shouldn't be such Puritans when it comes to our food.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. I know that we're going to be running out of time, but I really want people to know what to look out for, how to find you, and what is it that you're doing next. I know there probably is going to be you have some big plans, so tell us before you go what sort of things we should be looking out for.
Well, I'm still going on my journey, working on a restaurant, which I'm very excited about. I think, you know, we deserve...
You can come and have some Gary crisps there.
Yes, I'll make one specially for you.
Yes, okay.
Yeah, and really just experiencing life.
Fantastic. I mean, just on the note of purity with our food, what kind of things would you like people to try today? Like, so when you go in the kitchen, try something different today. What would you tell people at home to try differently?
I would say go to the market. Grab an ingredient from the market you've never used before. Take it home and find a way to use it. Use it to spice your omelette. Use it to, you know, use it to make in a stir fry. Just experience
that is a lot of experience. That's a lot of leeway. You were giving them too. I think that is too much. For me, that would be too much.
One ingredient.
Just one ingredient. Okay. All right, guys. Take a leap of faith with Chef Elegbede today. When you go out there, grab an ingredient and put it and use it some way, somehow. We're coming back with our next guest. We're going to take a quick break. Thank you. Did you have fun?